What's up, y'all? This is Will, and this is a special episode of the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, brought to you by Schedulefly. Schedulefly is restaurant employee scheduling software. We've been doing this since 2007, and we proudly serve over 5,000 restaurants, bars, breweries, distilleries, coffee shops, boutique hotels, and other hospitality businesses. We have super simple software. We have legendary customer service, meaning that you're going to have my personal cell phone number if you're a customer. And we have a low price point. We've never raised our prices in 17 years. If you are on hot schedules or seven shifts or any of these other sling, any of these other expensive, sometimes cumbersome softwares, and you want a very simple, elegant solution, and you want to spend a lot less money than what you're spending, check us out if you're on pencil and paper or Excel. And you need to have a little bit more efficient operations and save on some labor costs and give your employees something that makes their life easier. Check us out. We're at schedulefly.com. 30-day free trial. My cell phone is 704 906 2031. 704 906 2031. Call me. Happy to talk. Tell you more about it. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Restaurant Owners Uncorked. This is with Shawn Stokes. Shawn has been on this podcast many times. He's a restaurant and bar owner up in Durham, North Carolina, and he's an incredible dude. And here's a great example of what Shawn and his peers in this industry that we are so proud to serve do when people need them. Shawn raised a bunch of money, gathered a bunch of supplies, rented a U-Haul trailer, and drove up to Marshall, North Carolina. Spent 3 days up there cooking hot meals for people. This story is incredible. Not just what Shawn and many of his peers have done, but what the members of this community in Marshall and the communities all over Western North Carolina are doing to help each other, to coordinate, to leverage community members' strengths and skills to get back on their feet and get busy repairing and rebuilding. So this is just this, and this is on the ground, y'all. I mean, Shawn was up there 3 days. Went up there about a week after the storm and spent 3 days there. So very special episode, very special guy, great story, and thank you all for listening. See ya. All right, man. Well, okay. Do me a favor. You've been on here. You might be my most frequent guest at this point, but introduce yourself real quick, Shawn.
Uh, Well, I'm honored. I'm honored. I wish it wasn't always for, I don't know, challenges or catastrophic events or things like that. It seems like we've always been on addressing things like COVID or inflation or, now it's hurricanes and floods in my home state here.
Well,
Our
it's
home state, right?
yeah, well, it's an unfortunate thing, but it's the restaurant business too, isn't it? I mean,
Sure, yeah,
feel
yeah.
like it's feel like it's always something. It's yeah, but it's certainly a really tough time in our state. So, do me a favor, just introduce yourself real quick, Shawn, and then I want to talk to you about a lot of things, but the main one being what you just experienced last week or earlier
Yeah,
this week.
sure. My name is Shawn Stokes. I own a couple restaurants and a couple bars here in North Carolina. Luna Rotisserie is a restaurant with two locations, one in Durham, one in Carborough. And then I have two bars, Remy's Lounge and Ruby's on Five Points. And then inside of Remy's Lounge, we have a small little taco operation called Lady Gold Taco, which is relevant to this story. Lady Gold Taco, I have a partner who's from Texas, and so we do Austin style breakfast tacos, and then we also do street tacos at night in the bar.
Got it. All
Um,
right, man.
so
Uh, you've always been somebody that as many of your peers do, somebody that just truly exudes like what real hospitality is, which is a genuine care, like a deep care for the people around you, for your employees, for your customers, for your community. And I've always respected that a lot. I mean, I find like that is the core essence of hospitality. It's serving with a servant's heart and um, always going above and beyond to help those around you. So you uh, sent an email, I don't know, what was it, like a week ago? Was that to your whole, like, who did you send that email to talking about, what you were trying to accomplish up in the mountains?
Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words. It really means a lot um, coming from you, Will. And I do my best. That's why I got into this industry, and um, so I appreciate you
Yeah, man,
saying those
heartfelt
things.
for sure.
Um, so yeah, the day after the hurricane kind of went through North Carolina, I saw some of the footage coming in, and I have a dear friend of mine who I met here in Durham, North Carolina, 15 years ago. We were neighbors, and we became real close with he and his then girlfriend, and they've since married and have kids, and um, they moved to Marshall, North Carolina, about, gosh, I don't even know how long ago. It's got to be at least a decade ago, but um, we've stayed very, very close over the years, and we go up to Marshall quite often. Marshall, for those who aren't familiar, is a small town about 20 minutes outside of Asheville, 20, 25 minutes, depending upon how you get there. And um, it's just a beautiful little town. It's a real popular route for cyclists who kind of cycle through the mountains. Some people have made some investments in the town, opening up little coffee shops and restaurants, and actually like a bike shop and repair shop for things like that. And it's also a home of lots of artists, and but also carpenters and other working class folks. And it's just a real neat, tight knit community with a lot of variety of interesting and intentional people there. And so anyway, we know Marshall pretty well from going up there and staying with my friends and visiting, and really anytime that we're up in the mountains, we swing by there. And so anyway, when I saw the footage coming in, I just thought for sure that his house was gone. It's up about a few hundred feet off the main street, again. And so just kind of to orient folks to Marshall, the main street runs parallel to the French Broad, which is a large river that runs through North Carolina, and it also runs through Asheville. And so he's like located above there, but his house is kind of wedged into the side of a mountain. So I had been seeing the landslides and the mudslides, and then on the other side of the road from a very, very small single lane road that kind of goes up to his house, he also has a creek that runs through. So I just thought between the creek surging and the mudslides, probably his house was gone. It turns out that his house was fine. And we can get into the interesting dynamics of the storm as to why that's the case. It didn't really rain that much in Marshall, which is interesting. He actually has some video footage of watching, taken from his house, where you can see the French Broad is just surged, and there's a house being carried down the river, and in the background, it's blue skies. It's just the most
Wow.
surreal
Hey.
thing that you've seen. Um, and this is why the storm of the impact was so, it's just so unique for many reasons. But one is that you can drive around the mountains now, and in a lot of places it looks totally fine, and it is fine. There's water, there's electricity, there's cell service, but really it's these pockets of um, top. It'd be helpful to have like a topographical map, but as the ones that are kind of lower into these gorges and ravines,
Yeah.
especially ones that um, communities that are alongside of rivers and streams, those are the ones were just completely devastated because the amount of water that the storm dumped in this area, I think it's unlike anything that has ever really happened before. And water goes where gravity takes it, and it's going to go to take the path of least resistance, and that's what it did. And so, um, yeah. So to answer your question, so I reached out to him. It took a few days for me to get in touch with him, just to kind of see how his family was doing, because there was just no cell phone activity, or no cell phone service at all, really, where he was, and he also just was trying to scramble to help his family and his community. And but then I did hear back from him a few days later, and just kind of got an assessment of what was going on the ground there. And basically, what you have is um, the downtown of Marshall, and this paints a similar picture to dozens, if not hundreds, of communities throughout the the mountains of North Carolina right now. Several buildings were just wiped completely clean off the foundations and gone. The ones that are remain standing have, you know, up to 2 feet or more of mud inside. The drywall and insulation and studs of these, if they are, stud built, are just saturated and need to be torn out. And but the mud, so there are several additional, if they weren't bad enough with the mud, just having to shovel it out, shovelful by shovelful. Um, there are several different manufacturing facilities located along the French Broad and other rivers in Western North Carolina. And one of them that was kind of just upriver was a PVC manufacturing facility, and it breached.
Mm.
You also have, so that, you have all kinds of different hazardous chemicals that wound up in the water and into the mud. You have sewage treatment facilities that also breached. So now you have human waste and dangerous bacteria that's everywhere. On the first day that people, because this community is just so um, independent and motivated and you know community oriented, that people just kind of rushed to start digging places out, and a few people wound up really violently ill
Oh,
after that first day, and just wound up in a state for several days before they were able to recover. So now, and a couple, fast forward a couple days later, the sun has dried that stuff out. When the river receded, it left kind of a layer of that mud over the banks, over the street, over the sidewalks, over the rubble. That's a little bit thinner and able to dry out, and that's subsequently turned into dust. And so there's now you have all these chemicals and bacteria are now airborne. It's just created a nightmare scenario. So in order to continue working, we're talking like hundreds of community members, um, and these are shop owners, these are residents, these are artists, cooks, line cooks, bartenders. In other words, not like professional hazard
yeah.
mitigation crews. You also have lots of volunteers that are flocking in from all over the state and surrounding area to kind of help, but they're having to suit up in full Tyvek hazmat suits, basically, and with respirators. And it's the weather's cooled off a little bit this last week, but the previous couple weeks have been pretty hot. 85, high, mid to high 80s, sun beating down, and that's the conditions these folks are working in. So it's really important that they stay safe from the chemicals, but also that they stay incredibly hydrated and well fed, and to the extent that they can, rested. Sorry, there's a lot of context, a lot of background, but that's what it's all kind of relevant. So when I spoke to my friend, um, he said, "Look, we're in dire need of some way to cook hot meals in large quantities and do it quickly." They had basically what they've been working with was a 2 burner camp stove with a little green propane tanks, and we're talking hundreds of volunteers, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to feed these people 3 meals a day. So they have this 2 burner camp stove, and they've got basically like a backyard grill with a 20-pound propane tank, and that's the equipment they had to use to kind of produce the 11th meal. So, needless to say, that a lot of what they were packaging up were sandwiches, cold cut sandwiches, and they're getting a ton of donations of food, which is great. They've got tons of water donations. They're getting a lot of produce donations. So basically, at this point, you can make a lot of sandwiches and you can wrap those up. You can grill a lot of hot dogs and the hamburgers on that backyard grill. But I don't think folks have had a vegetable in 6 or 7 days at this point because it's just hard to cook vegetables on a two burner camp stove, at least the quantity of what they were doing. And, as much as delicious as sandwiches are, you kind of crave a hot meal after a while. And
Absolutely.
so I said, look, so just kind of going back to Lady Gold Taco, or that business we started off incubating with a like an LA style street taco cart that we had custom made in California and shipped to us, and it's on wheels, it runs on propane tanks, it's got a large flat top, a fryer, and two full size steam wells, and it's not very heavy. It's fairly easy to transport. And so I said, man, I'm going to bring this up there and see if we can't cook some hot meals for some folks for a few days, and get some vegetables, because they were getting donations of fresh produce, but a lot of it was spoiling because it just wasn't
Can't
being
do
cooked
anything. Yeah,
fast
right.
enough. So you had waste. A lot of other times, when they were trying to anticipate the needs of like how many meals they're going to have, because they're not just feeding the volunteers at this point, but there's also community members from surrounding areas that are even further remote from Marshall and even more cut off and just don't have as large or as tight knit of a community. And so you had folks from surrounding areas coming and trying to get meals. And so at times they were trying to anticipate higher demand coming in. They would cook a lot of meals. Fortunately, there are a few restaurant owners and kitchen managers and chefs down there that know food safety, right? And they were being vigilant about, like, hey, if this is spent more than 4 hours outside of the temperature danger zone, we've got to chuck it, because the last thing we need right now on top of this emergency is a foodborne illness
Right.
uh, outbreak on top of it, right? Like they don't even there's no toilets, right? There's nothing down there. They had a couple porta potties that had been brought by. So you can imagine what a nightmare that would have been if something like that had happened, right? As well. So what was happening was that then that food would then get tossed, and no one wants to see that going, especially at a time when resources are so scarce. So I sent out an email to basically people in my network. Uh, Actually, the email list was the email list that we used to kind of announce our soft opening of friends and family when we open our restaurants and our bars. So I
Right.
had that spreadsheet already there. I just copied and pasted it into an email saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. We're going to bring this taco cart up there." Um, and a lot of folks thought like, "Oh, you're going to make tacos," but this cart is very flexible. You can use it to cook anything, right? Um, Almost anything, I guess. And just basically said, we're going to go up there and we're going to cook some hot meals. But if I'm going up there, I may as well take as much other supplies as I can as well. Anyone that wants to chip in, please chip in. So, um, within, I would say, 2 to 3 hours, I had over $2,000 in my Venmo account from people
Wow.
just like flooding me, $100 here, $50 there. And that was just really moving to see just how quickly people were throwing in, were contributing, and wanted to kind of help with the effort. So we loaded up. I got a 12-foot by 6-foot U-Haul trailer. We loaded up the taco cart, and then um, all the food that we knew we were going to cook. Seth Gross from Bull City Burger, who you know very well, he
Yeah.
donated a couple just massive coolers that I needed. We had people that let us borrow some folding tables and canopies to kind of set up basically a pretty functional mobile kitchen. And then we also grabbed diapers and tampons and pads and batteries and hydration packets that could be put into water bottles, whatever, anything we could kind of think of. And my buddy in Marshall was sending me updated lists as to kind of what was the daily need that they had, right? Because these things are evolving so quickly that we wanted to make sure that we were bringing up what was going to be helpful. So we got up there. I drove the car or the trailer up. Um, and we set up shop quickly and just started making meals. Well, quickly word got out to other communities that we were pumping out even more food. So I would say that, on day one when we were there, we and I say we because it wasn't just me, it was a combination of lots of folks there that were pitching in. The camp stove was still going, the grill was also still going. There were people that were cooking hamburgers and hot dogs at the same time as I was cooking up um, lots of vegetables and start rice and um, beans and basically anything we could put together. Um, Basically, the meals that go down to the rivers where the cleanup crew had to be kind of handheld, foil wrapped because they can't really use a fork while they're in those suits. So we were sending down, burritos and burgers, things like that. Um, and then meals that were going out or for up at the top of the hill. We started, um, was doing fork ready meals for those. And then dinner was always fork ready meals. So I would say we had about, 200 meals going towards the volunteers. But um, then I think we shipped out. We would get like phone calls coming in saying, "Hey, there's this nursing home in Yancey needs 150 meals, or this community here needs 100 meals." And so people were coming up and just loading up, loaded clamshells of fork ready meals that we were putting together and then driving them out to places, sometimes where they would then be piled onto an ATV to get further back into these communities that were completely cut off because roads had just been decimated. Um, so um, what our role was basically to try and prepare as much like vegetables and components that could be then um, put onto a table and kind of an assembly line like you would kind of build these meals, whether they be wraps, sandwiches, or fork ready meals. Um, I should back up a little bit and say this whole operation was taking place. A tiny home built manufacturing company at the top of the hill there in Marshall called Nanostead. Um, and they had maybe four homes under construction that were not completely finished. And so they had, they had walls and roof and doors, but they hadn't. That was it. They hadn't been finished, and so the community had converted each of these, with the permission of the owner, into different storage areas, and then the warehouse where they typically do a lot of the construction that had been converted into a massive storage area and an assembly line basically for assembling wheels. Um, by the end of, or I would say it wasn't even the end of my first day there. It was like halfway through, I realized that if this operation was going to continue to produce this amount of food and do it safely and quickly and be able to utilize the supplies that were coming in and avoid waste, they they needed to have a stronger cooking capacity like the taco cart that we brought up there. So I spoke with Rob, my partner, said, look, do we need this taco cart anytime soon? We've since moved the cooking operations of Lady Gold inside into a brick and mortar kitchen inside the bar. So we decided no, we don't really need it anytime soon. So we ultimately made the decision to leave the whole mobile kitchen that we'd set up there. So we've everything that we brought up in terms of tables, tents, the taco cart um, is there, and I basically just kind of gave a quick instruction or a quick tutorial on how to use it to some of the folks there that already have experience operating restaurants, and that unfortunately their restaurants aren't open right now. Um, there's a restaurant called Noodle Hole that I'll shout out to. Holly is the owner's name, and bless their heart, they opened their doors in Marshall 2 weeks before the hurricane came. So anyone that's listening to this that owns a restaurant or that's ever built out a restaurant or opened a restaurant knows that you've got up to it can be a year from start to finish where you begin working with architects and GCs and permits and sourcing equipment and getting everything moved in and getting your permits and hiring and training and dry runs and friends and family night and all that stuff. And by the time when you finally get to that opening day, it's like you've reached the summit of Everest, and it feels good. And
Yeah.
and then you expect to kind of go downhill in terms of like your workload after that and fall into some sort of steady state of operations, and you can take a breath. And so to have that taken away just mere 2 weeks after summiting that proverbial mountaintop is just heartbreaking and devastating to even think about. Um,
What's the name of the restaurant?
Noodle hole.
Noodle
Uh,
Hole in
yeah,
March.
they have another restaurant in Asheville as well that I think is also down at this point and not able to operate. But gosh, she and her husband were just in really great spirits, and we're just putting their heads down and just focusing 100% on contributing to the recovery effort and getting their community back up on their feet.
Hospitality, man. There it is. I tell
Yeah,
you, dude, that I just feel like people that, particularly the mom and pops and independent restaurant owners, y'all are doing this for something, it's not a way to get rich. I mean, you can make money in restaurants, you can, but there are
yeah,
so many challenges, and those challenges have only increased this year. With how just what's been going on with the economy, and it's harder than ever. And then here this couple is that 2 weeks after opening, what are they focused on? Everybody else. I mean,
yeah.
it's like it just net. I'm always surprised, but never surprised, right? Like you hear these stories, and you're just like, yeah, like it just that's what you get with people in this world. Shawn, gosh, where do I start? I have so many questions about this. So you showed up what, like a week? How many days after the storm hit? Because I mean, you had a few days where you couldn't even reach people up there. I mean, I was calling people, there was like
Yeah.
no cell signal. Like what was it, like 4 or 5 days after the storm that you went up there, or a week after?
A little more than a week. We showed up on so at first I was like, I think I got the call. I finally got contact with him on Tuesday. And gosh, I might look at a calendar real quick just to
So today's Friday, so it's been like 2 weeks. So you were like 4 days after the storm or whatever that you heard from him finally.
yeah. And so then I thought, okay, it was like Tuesday evening. I'm gonna hit the road Thursday morning. And then after talking with Maria, my wife, about it, she's like, there's no way you can get everything put together that quick fast." And
Yeah.
I realized she was right, per usual. And the the so I said, look, okay, so the first step was just like kind of getting everything together, right? And I mean, I have a full, half-ton pickup truck, and we've loaded it to the gills 4 times going to Costco. You know, just loading it up, bringing it back, put it in my garage, load it up, put it back in my garage. And then, it was hard to get a U-Haul trailer, which I think is a testament to how many people are doing similar projects,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So I had to drive almost to Raleigh to get the right size U-Haul trailer. I get that there. And then, long story short, it took a few days to kind of get everything together as much as I wanted to hit the road immediately and help out. Um, so then I ended up leaving about 4 a.m. on Saturday morning. So that would have been Saturday, the 5th of October.
Wow.
Um, and I avoided I-40 on the way out because I'd heard that it still wasn't quite open yet. On the way back, I took 40 back, and it is open. So if anyone else is, looking to kind of get up there and help out, kind of that's coming from the Eastern North Carolina, know that you can get there on 40 safely and save yourself some time. I took 20. I kind of headed to Charlotte first and then grabbed 26 from there and went up.
Oh yeah, that's a haul. Yeah. So you can get there on 40 going 40's just closed off going west, right? And is that
It's
that's like
open both directions now.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's open both directions, and the majority of the folks, I maybe the majority, at least half of people I saw on the road were either lineman crews, coming out to in you know power and light trucks and tractor trailers carrying heavy machinery, excavators and things like that, and flatbed trailers full of ATVs
Mm,
um, coming up, and so to try and get help to these places that were literally just cut off from the world.
yeah.
And the only way to kind of get things in and out of there is either through helicopter or through an ATV.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so Marshall, how many people live in Marshall, roughly? A
Few hundred,
few
few
hundred. Yeah.
hundred, but
Yeah.
you do get a lot of it's turned into a little tiny tourist mecca, and but it's a pretty small community. Definitely not the smallest out that way. There's some that are just like communities of like a few dozen people.
Yeah. So everybody there immediately is out trying to figure out what to do. People are getting sick. How do they get like, where do you get the Tyvek suits?
Those things are being donated. Those things are being
Oh,
shipped out there, and people are bringing the supplies. It's these things. I'm not the one who I thought this before, and I have since seen articles in the media talking about this, but like calling or comparing this environment to the fog of war. It's like the fog of disaster relief, where it's just impossible to make really good decisions and know what is going to be needed from moment to moment.
mhm.
Um, so I think the first response was let's send a ton of drinking water, bottled water, food, things like that. Um, and then that has quickly shifted to like by the time that I got there, the woman who Darcy, who was leading the kind of leading the kitchen operation, she was like, "We got enough water to fill the French broad over again." Now it's like, and we're so grateful for that. Now we need PPE, we need Tyvek suits, we need respirators, we need gloves, things like that to help with the excavation. And who knows, by now they may have mountains of that stuff too. It's going to be a while before, so it's probably very much still needed. Please do not take this as a indication that these things are not needed out there because I think it's going to be weeks, if not months, before the full cleanup's complete. Um, but yeah, it's all just a way of saying that for people, I want people to go easy on themselves if things are waste not wasted, but if we're not getting it right in terms of what's being
Yeah,
sent
there's
there.
no right. Yeah, no worries. If the food has to go because it's spoiled, it's like it's
Yeah,
all good. Like
let's
nobody, there's no like playbook for this. You just go, oh, well, look on page 3. This is what we do. Like they're figuring this out literally as they go. There's no precedent
yeah,
kind of stuff.
and and as my buddy David said, he was like, someone was another one of the community members was really upset that they had had to toss like 8 meals, hot meals at the end of the day. And he's like, isn't that a sign of success? Like, doesn't that mean that
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
we'd rather have it 8 meals over than 8 meals short. 8 people not like going home hungry tonight, right? So let's not beat ourselves up over this shit. Let's call it a win if we're throwing away eight
Oh,
meals, hot meals at the end of the day. And I thought that was
yeah.
a really important perspective, um, which it's hard to maintain the right perspective and a positive perspective under these circumstances. So even if someone's not able to do that, then I have to give them grace too.
And Grace too.
I can't imagine what they're going through right now.
Um, business. Okay, so you're up there. So now people are out there. They're in Tyvek suits, literally like with shovels, trying to shovel off the streets, shovel off the mud that's in the buildings. Was it all? I mean, was like I don't know what like you hear all these different like is FEMA there at this point helping or like is the government there or are they still staging? I know there's a lot of coordination that has to go into that stuff. So you're obviously just going to have the immediate thing is like we're going to just take care of our community and whenever they come out. But I have no idea like that you hear all this stuff. I have no clue like what's been going on there.
Yeah. This is one of the additional challenges and new challenges that I think we're seeing with the age of the internet. And as you've probably heard about, just like these fake stories and things like that are just really confounding the recovery operations and making it very difficult. So I just want to state that I know that the federal government is there and helping in places, and so I don't want to, I want to state right at the gate go that they are there. I didn't, but I can only speak from my experience in Marshall, and there's no FEMA presence yet, and there's no federal assistance yet, and I can speculate why that might be. And my hope is that it's because they're just triaging the communities that need it most and maybe are aware that the community effort is so robust and organized and established in this area right now that they're going to go to the places that don't have that established yet. Um, and then the other thing I'll say is that, I talked to a lot of folks there, and many of them, not all, but many of them really don't want them there right now.
That was my next question. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's because they're concerned about they have lots of different concerns. Whether or not they're warranted, I don't know. But I think what I know a lot of folks there. So Marshall is a lot of the buildings that are down there are old, historic, beautiful buildings.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's a big part of the character and the aesthetic of the town. And a lot
Yeah.
of folks are really, really worried that FEMA is going to come in and condemn these buildings and make them tear them down, and it's gonna basically destroy the character of the town. Again, I don't know if those concerns are warranted. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I think that a lot of folks, even if they're not super skeptical or cynical about the intentions of FEMA, I think they'd like to postpone as long as possible their arrival so they can clean up as much of these buildings and get them as ready as possible with the hope that they aren't condemned. Um,
Well, I could totally understand that because what you don't want, I mean, everybody's like, where's FEMA? FEMA should be there. Cool, yes. But if you're there, I would imagine being like, I don't really want the federal government in here like taking over and taking control. And like, we're just volunteer. I mean, look, that's what happens immediately. It's, if you're going to sit there and wait on that, you're going to have problems. If you just go, let's just roll our sleeves up and do what we do best in America when crises happen is just let's just help each other. Like let's
yeah,
just get together and help. And
yeah, and I'll take a moment just to kind of I uh I can't state enough how impressive their operation that they put together in Marshall was. When I got there, I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. They
this
had
is all
taken
coordinated by locals and volunteers and just
yeah,
regular
just
citizens who just went,
local community members.
we don't
Yeah,
know
so
what to
basically
do,
they
but we're
had
gonna figure it out.
They had said in a matter of days, they had set up this operation where, you know, they like I said, there's 4 or 5 of these tiny homes were under construction. One was dedicated solely to like produce and dry goods. One was dedicated to medical supplies. One had been dedicated to equipment like sump pumps that have been donated and camping stoves that have been donated to kind of distribute to other folks. Um, and then they had a whole tent set up for volunteers to suit up, but then also detox at the end of the day and take off their suits and safely rid them of any chemicals. They had a whole other operation of taking the respirators and cleaning and clearing those out, getting them ready for the next day. There was another tent that was set up as a wellness tent for anyone who had been set up and you had all kinds of medical supplies and everything put in there. um, big giant whiteboards inside the warehouse that were organizing this many meals are coming from these organizations today at this time. This is where the need, what are our needs right now in terms of food, supplies, equipment? I mean, just who's responsible for, I mean, they had schedules of who's be coming in to do what. I mean, and it was, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really just super, super impressive. And I can understand fully why you wouldn't want, as someone who's, I'm not a libertarian. I'm not, most of my policy leanings are, I believe in taxes and in public goods and that we need them very, very much. Um, but I also am aware. I'm also a public policy major, so I'm also aware of where public goods should be and where private goods should be. And as someone who owns a number of businesses and had lots of interactions with working with the government, I know its shortcomings, and I could see very well how. I'm not saying it would happen, but it's possible that it would happen that um, the government could come into an operation that's this organized and muck things up pretty good. And now, is that to say they shouldn't go someplace that's less organized? I think they absolutely 100% should and help them get up to speed and help those communities out. But one like this that is just so well oiled and so well coordinated and functioning, in a way that would exceed anyone's expectations. I think, okay, yeah, spend your time someplace else, and let these guys sort it out. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, dude, I love the way you put things. I mean, I wouldn't want them anywhere near that if I mean, it's just like, leave us alone, man. Like, because they're gonna everything's gonna move slower and be more bureaucratic. And I mean, I don't know. You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. Like, we kind of just need people to let us do. And that's a town of entrepreneurs. That's a small town of, I mean, lots of people that own small businesses and that have clearly demonstrated that they've allocated out their skill sets appropriately so that they have a really organized and well-tuned operation going. And man, that's amazing. Hats off to the folks of Marshall because they've got an immediate huge challenge to navigate, and then they've just got this long, and that's where maybe over the long term where maybe there can be some outside resources that help, because you're talking about a town that's going to have to be rebuilt, recharged. There's so much that's going to happen with, I mean, it's going to happen, insurance and just it's going to be a long, long haul. I feel like, I mean, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my mind around how long it's probably going to take some of these towns and communities. Chimney Rock. I mean,
Yeah,
Megan Venuto had her on the podcast. Her whole, I mean, that whole town is gone. Like
it's
the
gone.
the
Yeah,
30 businesses that she was a part of. She, owned Highlands Tap and Grill there. Like, the river is where the real estate was now. There's nothing that, how do you even account for that? Like, how does insurance account for that? How does, like, it'll take forever to figure all this stuff out. But it really is awesome to see the ingenuity and intention and care and thoughtfulness and organization of just local citizens that go, well, we got this big problem, but let's just start figuring it out, like, right now. And the evolving needs. Oh crap, we're just going to go down there and start shoveling. Uh-oh, people are getting sick. Let's get Tyvek suits. Okay, now, all right, well, now we need hot meals, and you show, dude, what an amazing story. I mean, there's going to be so many great stories that come out of this horrible tragedy, and as there always are. But man, you're just such a good dude, bro. I mean, I love you for what you do, and there's so many of your peers in your industry all around the country do this kind of stuff because it's what you do, and without even thinking. And it's just, I'm never I'm never not proud that we get to serve at our company, your industry, because y'all are just amazing people, man. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I
well,
think.
thanks. And it's all you see it all over the place. Like right now, I think there's a whole slew of Durham restaurants and chefs that are putting together a massive benefit dinner. It's going to be held at the Durham Hotel on Saturday night. There's going to be an auction, and everyone's just like donating their time and their food to the dinner, and 100% of proceeds are going to that. Yeah, I just got an email from another guy here who is I don't think it'll be a problem. I'm going to hold on, I'm giving too many people's names because they may not want
Yeah.
to have it out there. But although I think his name should be out there, but he's working with World Central Kitchen, and he's cooking hotel pans of hot meals here, putting it into hot boxes and bringing it up there to be distributed. He's done 5,000 meals so far. So World Central Kitchen, is a fantastic organization. They oftentimes set up kitchens in on site, but in this case, they're actually sourcing meals that are being produced in cities all over North Carolina and then shipped to distribution centers, and then those are going out. And so I'm one of many people in this industry that are just they've dropped everything and they're throwing everything they've got into doing what they can to help out in any way that they can.
Um, so I've got on my Giving Kitchen hat,
Yeah,
and
say that. Yeah.
so I'm glad that you and Jen are now connected. That is an absolutely phenomenal organization. For those of you listening, if you don't know about the Giving Kitchen, I've talked about them before, and I had Jen on the podcast. And if you're in hospitality and you don't know about Giving Kitchen, just I'm giving them a plug here. Check them out because they are just slammed. I think I saw the statistics she sent. Normally a caseworker there is handling like 30 or 40 cases at a time. Now it's like 150 or something like that. Pre-Milton, just from Helene, and who knows what it'll get to with Milton. But and you mentioned Southern Smoke, so another similar organization. I don't know a whole lot about them. I think they're very similar and they coordinate together sometimes. But these are great organizations that you can check out. Giving Kitchen, being the one that I just happen to know well, folks that help hospitality workers in crisis, and not just this is an acceleration of the need, but this is an ongoing need where um, people that work in the hospitality industry, and you said it well, Shawn, like somebody, I don't know, whatever, like breaks their leg and can't work and they've got medical bills and can't pay rent. Like for decades now, they would like go to the owner of the restaurant and say, "Hey, could you lend me a little bit of money?" Or, the restaurant might do a fundraiser or whatever for them. Like, but it's always kind of been done in-house, if you will. And so that's why these organizations are so powerful because they're doing that at scale, across the country, which is really cool. So I did want to bring them up. I wore this hat very intentionally because we had that email exchange. So thank you for the minute here to just give them a little bit of a plug.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you introducing me to them. I was also just very recently in the last couple of weeks introduced to Southern Smoke, and I'm just so happy to know that these organizations are out there. As someone who's personally been injured and was put out of work. This has been like 20 years ago, and just how scary that is. Like when I was in my 20s and I was a cook, I was living paycheck to paycheck for sure. And I sprained my ankle skateboarding. Um, and it was the first time it dawned on me like, oh shit, like I can't, I can't get hurt because if I
Yeah.
do, then I'm, I can't pay rent. And, fortunately, it wasn't that bad of an injury. I was out of work for about a week, but had it been longer, I can't even imagine what would have happened. So, and, back in the day, if you were in a robust enough restaurant community, oftentimes people would put together like a little fundraiser. People would chip in, throw money into a hat. But it's just really great to see that their organizations have taken that and put it to a much larger scale. That someone who has an injury that puts them out of work for a matter of few weeks, all the way to something like this, where I mean, the amount of displacement in Asheville, that is a very, very tourist driven economy, and therefore has a much, much higher than average per capita number of restaurants and bars and things like that. Those folks are not going to be back to work in Asheville for a very long time. Um, it's there are, I don't want to make a lot of comparisons this way because everything is unique, but I will make a comparison to Katrina in this sense, like New Orleans, very, very tourist driven, hospitality driven town city.
Yeah.
And I think the latest numbers that I've read is that to date, only 20% of people who were in New Orleans prior to Katrina are there today. And
Mm.
so those people were displaced for a very long time and stayed that way. And a lot of those folks were restaurant workers and they found jobs and they moved to other cities, other communities, found jobs and replanted roots there. But that transitional time takes time. And that's time without any sort of income. And so anyway, Giving Kitchen, Southern Smoke, these are lifesavers for in situations like this for these folks. And the more people that know about it, both who need to be on the receiving end, but those who can be on the giving end, all the better. So let's shout from the mountaintops that these places exist.
Agree. I talked to Marwan Irani up in Asheville, Chai Pani. Do you know Marwan?
Not personally, no, but I've been in communication with them before. Interestingly, I don't know if it's him, but one of the owners of Chai Pani is went to school with my friend who lives in Marshall. So he has actually connected me in the past. I think when I had some initial questions about opening up a second location of our initial concept, he put me in contact with them because they had already kind of done that before, and so he gave me some advice via email on. So we've been connected via email, but not face to face.
Great dude.
Small world.
Yeah. Well, and he's a lot, he's at the center of so many great things up there. And I've spoken to him. I've spoken to Anthony Serrato at Gemelli and Strata. I've spoken to Eric Sheffer, Benny's, Jetty Ray's, a few other ones. And I mean, the general message is lots of aid coming in, lots of help coming in, lots of resources coming in. We need people coming in. Like
Oh, wow.
there's, like Marwan's like, tell people to come to Asheville. Fall's a big season for them. It's been a tough year already. Asheville's had a hard time just over the last year or two with their economy generally. So they're just like, come up here. Like, like, because people are scared to go. Blowing Rock, the same thing. Cobb Milner, who owns Bistro Roca up there, which has been there forever. I texted him like 4 or 5 days ago. I said, I'm just texting people going like, what can I do? How can I help or whatever? What word? And they're like, he said, please tell people to come to Blowing Rock. We are open. We need people. People are scared to come
This
up
is
here.
this is so interesting because I feel like there needs to be some either the messaging is wrong or that it needs to be unified or maybe it just needs to be more nuanced. But a lot of authorities are saying stay out of here, like don't come up here, right? Like I got when I sent out this email to folks saying that telling them what I was doing, a few people wrote back and said, "Hey, the authorities are saying not to go to the mountains, to stay where you stay put." And I'd heard that, and I'd read that, and I don't know. I've never been a rule follower, but so I was going anyway. But
Yeah,
if I were
baby.
to, so if I was gonna have a charitable interpretation of it, though, I'm thinking, okay, maybe they don't want people coming up like rubbernecking, right? Just coming up just to kind of
Yep.
clog the area and just look at the damage. And if that's the case, then let's make that a nuanced message. Like, hey, we could use some help volunteer in some cases volunteering and helping these communities dig themselves out. In other cases, we need people that can come and like spend money at these operations that are still open. Like
Yep.
there's Murray, my family and I went up and we stayed in West Asheville in the spring, and there's a cool little economic center there with lots of little restaurants and bars, vintage stores and things like that. And um, my wife, bought something from one of the stores there, and got on an email list, and this infuriates me to even tell the story, but she sent out an email to everyone who had been, had signed up on their email list, and said, "Hey, everyone, my landlord is insisting that I still pay rent because technically we're allowed to be open. We still have power and water and sewer. So can you please just consider like buying some things online for my store? I'll mail them to you. Can you please consider like donating to this GoFundMe?" So without going onto a rant and a tirade about greedy landlords who aren't willing to, give some grace on rent abatement in a time like this. Yeah, let's not go out of our way to tell people who are want to come to these areas and spend money that they shouldn't come up there, you know?
I heard the same thing initially, like the authorities are, I get, I mean, you're right. Like if you're charitable, they're like, just, we need, but that's the thing, like this stuff, it's like, we're going to control this situation. Man, you're, especially if you've never owned a business or run a business and you don't understand that side of it, it's tough because, you can't really understand what is it, like how badly this, like, great, you're there, cool. But if people don't come, these businesses are going to close anyway. Like, doesn't matter. Like, over time. So, yeah, the landlord thing, man. I mean, there are some good landlords out there, but come on, folks. Like, golly. Uh, it's a weird thing, man. I'm not much of a rule follower. That's why you and I are on. We wouldn't have made it in corporate America, man. I remember when the it's good intentions, right? But like when we had our ransomware attack a few years ago, the FBI, I talked to this FBI agent, he's like, don't pay them. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, if you pay them, then they're going to keep doing this stuff. And we need people to not pay so that, they'll stop doing it. I'm like, okay, are you gonna pay us for like not having a business anymore? Well, no,
Right.
but we need you to step up and be, I was like, dude, I hear you. I get it. I see where you're coming from. Sorry. Like politely, like go screw yourself. Like that's not how this works, man. Like,
It's
you know,
not realistic. And how about you do your job better? Right, and find these
exactly.
people, right? Like this is
Exactly.
not, I don't want to be the sacrificial lamb on your theory this is going to stop this practice from happening.
Well, you know what the other part of that conversation was, and by the way, hate to tell you this, but it'll be forever before we get to your case because you're a small business and this is a small demand. Like we're dealing with companies that have, hundreds of millions of dollars of ransom, on the line, things like that. So don't do it, but we're not going to help you. It's like, okay, got it. Like we'll figure this out on our own. Yeah, it's a weird dynamic, man. At the end of the day, we got to do what we got to do in business and our, in these communities. Just it's great. I'm not surprised, but it's just so encouraging to hear how many people are just doing whatever and going up there and showing up and picking up a shovel or organizing people or cooking food or anything, man. And I'm it's such a it is such a terrible tragedy, but many great positive things will come out of it for sure. Um, uh, what else is on anything else on your mind, Shawn? I mean, we've talked about this for a while. What else is going on?
I just want to I wanted to just give a quick, because if any folks are wanting to help out or contribute. So this is Madison County, Marshall's Madison County. So if anyone that people are continuing to take donations there, there's also like just if they want to just donate straight cash via Venmo. I don't have the Venmo to the actual community that's there, but they are using it to buy supplies if they need or can find them. But one of the organizations there is called the Community Housing Coalition of Madison County, and this is sort of a it's like Habitat for Humanity, but it's a local Madison County um, organization, and they are, not surprising, so effective and well organized that Habitat for Humanity has decided not to even set up an operation in Madison County because they've got it covered. Um, so the Community Housing Coalition of Madison County is a great spot for you want to help with the long term recovery of this area.
Yeah.
Uh, I would just say that that's another place that they can donate. In addition to obviously Given Kitchen and Southern Smoke and some of these folks we've already mentioned, the one thing that I've heard a lot from people is just wanting to know, like they want to help, they can't drop everything for whatever reason and do some of the stuff like boots on the ground, but they also want to make sure that their funds and efforts are going to the most effective use in places where it's going to be, most efficient. So I just want to kind of throw that out there.
Community Housing Coalition of Madison County, North Carolina. Okay. I'll get the link. So
Yeah.
when I post this, I'll put.
And yeah, and elsewhere, like in other communities, because again, like this is just for perspective, this geographic area that was impacted is the size of Belgium, a small country. It's is a there are hundreds of communities that are in need, and so that don't have a similar organization like this. So Habitat for Humanity is helping people rebuild their homes in those areas, and it's probably going to get there a lot faster than through anyone who had insurance and or through federal uh, assistance. It's also worth mentioning as well that most people in the mountains don't have flood insurance
Yeah.
for real understandable reasons, right? Like there's no oceans around, and so some folks there, because I don't have many kind words to say about insurance companies. Um, I don't think I have any. Yeah, but they'll find any way to not pay a claim. And so you might have homeowners insurance, but as we all know, if you don't have flood insurance, you lose your home to a flood, you're screwed. So if not to these that Madison specific organization, then Habitat for Humanity is one of the organizations that's really effective and going to help people get their houses back together.
Yeah. Um, I know, man. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking like, I don't have flood insurance. How would we flood? But I don't know. I bet they'll sell a lot more flood insurance now. Wow, those insurance companies. I think like, yeah, none of them had it. Why would you? I mean, you're
Yeah.
what so okay. What other were there other organizations up there? Like, did you see other organizations in Marshall?
Um,
Like there's one called Convoy of Hope I've heard about that was trying to get people up there. I know Samaritan's Purse is trying to get like those are the ones I've heard about, but I don't have again no clue if they're actually like where they are or what they're doing.
there was one organization that was putting out a ton of meals, and that was very very helpful. And I want to make sure I get it right. Yeah, Mercy Chefs.
Mercy Chefs. Okay.
Yeah. Um, I believe that was the one that I saw. Yes, exactly. Mercy Chefs. So they were doing really great work, getting a lot of food out there to folks. Lots of hot meals. That was the only other one that I saw when I
Okay.
was there. But again, I was there for 3 days, and so I was pretty much hunkered down in that one little kitchen that we set up for, and then I slept in a tent at night. So I didn't really go. I wasn't exposed to a whole lot other than my little area that I had set up.
TCB, man. You there taking care of business. All right.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you as always. And I'm gonna get this thing up. I just did this at home. The studio I couldn't get in there, and I'm doing this at home, which is actually good because they take a little while to edit these things. I'm gonna get this up today, and I'll send you the link. And let's get this episode around. People want to know. People want to hear this. This is what you did and what all those folks are doing is awesome. And yeah, man. As always, I appreciate you, brother, very much. And thank you.
Well, I appreciate you, and I thank you for getting the word out there, and just for being an advocate for our industry in general, and a resource. There's so many reasons why folks should be listening to this podcast. So thank you for what you do too.
Yeah, man. Keep spreading the word. All right. Well, good to see you. Take care. And let's yeah, we'll just stay in touch, man. I literally think I think you're the record holder. This might be like episode number 5 or something like that. So we should just do like a quarterly episode, Sean. You always have good things to talk about, man, and good
I'd be
ideas.
happy to do it, just as long as if you think I have something valuable to contribute.
You always do, man. And we look, we need to do the next one like in a like not in the middle of a like some crisis.
I agree. Let's do something. Let's do something where we're just talking about nothing but unicorns and rainbows.
I love it, man. Well, as soon as we're seeing that in the hospitality industry again, we'll talk about that for sure. Well, thank you,
All right.
man. I appreciate you very much. A lot of people do. So, and have a good weekend, man.
Thanks, Will. You too.
All right. See you.
All right. Bye bye.